This paper is October-November 2023, paper 1, variant 1. All right. Now let me give you one pro tip. If you've studied all the chapters in the textbook, right, you must know that the questions are in a sequential format. So the very first topic within the syllabus, which is from microeconomics, is tested in a very first question. And as we progress through the paper, we see that the topics are in the same sequence in your syllabus outline or in your textbooks as well. So the very first question is going to be about the basic economic problem, and the last few questions are going to be related to your balance of payments and exchange rates. So if there's any particular section in which you're losing a lot of marks and you're getting a lot of mistakes, then you can revise that particular session only. I mean, that's the best thing for you to do to prepare and to boost, to enhance your performance in your MCQ papers. Now let us begin. Economists describe resources as being scarce. The basic economic problems: limited resources and unlimited ones. Ones will exceed productive capacity, right? The other points here are not relevant to the basic economic problem or scarcity. All right, next. The diagram shows the percent positive curve for an economy producing consumer and capital goods. Now, this is a constant opportunity cost PPC. If it was not a constant opportunity cost PPC, it would have been something like this, like you've studied earlier. Right, now the thing here is that the economy is currently producing at OM. So basically, this is where we're producing right now. Right, and OG capital goods, this much capital goods. So we're at this point. OM consumer goods and OG capital goods, we're at this point here. Right, it decides to increase production of capital goods to OH. So we are moving from G to H. And we're going to be at this point on the PPC. So moving from this point to this point, we sacrifice ML of consumer goods. What is the opportunity cost decision in terms of consumer goods? Well, it is ML. There's one more thing that you could do, is that you could try and solve this paper as you watch this video and then see if your answer was correct or not. In this way, you're going to be learning these topics, these MCQs in real time, and you'll be testing your ability to solve them. So just pause the video, try to figure out the answer yourself, and resume the video and see if your answer or your understanding of the concept was correct or not. A hospital has spent all of its budget allocated for employing doctors. What is the opportunity cost to the hospital of employing extra doctors? So the thing is that all of its budget has been exhausted. There is no spare budget. There is no excess, any surpluses that they've left. They've extinguished all of their resources in employing doctors. Now, if they want to employ any more doctors, they must do a compromise in some other areas of their spending. So this could be a reduction in the number of personnel. Yes. Right. Next question. There has been an increase in the demand for wheat. This has led to an increase in the demand for labor to harvest the wheat. Now, labor is derived demand. Okay. So when we talk about which branch of economics covers these two concepts, micro and macro. So basically your entire syllabus is divided into two portions, microeconomics and macroeconomics. When we're talking about individual industry, households, sectors, right, markets, then that's microeconomics. When we're talking about macro, we're talking about economy as a whole. This mainly includes your macroeconomic objectives of the government and macroeconomic policies. Now, when we talk about increase in the demand for wheat is a particular market. It does not have to do with the entire economy, so it's micro, right? So we cannot go with option A or option B. Increase in the demand for labor to harvest wheat. Well, this has to do with labor market. It's still not the unemployment rate or the unemployment level in the entire economy. It's just in the employment or unemployment in a particular sector, that is the wheat, right? Or when we're talking about primary sector, we're talking about markets for wheat. We're not talking about economy at large. So still it's a microeconomics concept. So we're going to go with option D. All right, next. In the United Kingdom, the price of timber used in house building increased. This was because of a boom in the UK house building industry and a shortage of drivers to deliver the timber. What happened in the UK market for timber to cause this price increase? So the price of timber has gone up, right? and it's used in house building. So obviously there must have been increase in demand for timber. What has happened in the UK market to cause this price increase? So if the demand increases, the price goes up. So it's not shift left, it's shift right. And the thing is, because of boom in the UK house industry, there's obviously increase in demand for houses, and there's an increase in demand for timber, right? It's the raw material used in the production of houses. So this would cause the demand curve to shift towards right, and this will cause the price to increase, as you've been reading here. And the second factor that led to an increase in the price of timber is shortage of drivers to deliver the timber, because that's going to make it more expensive to supply timber, and is going to cause your supply curve to shift towards left, which again causes the price to rise. So we're going to go with option C over here. Supply curve shifts towards left due to shortage of drivers, and the demand curve shifts towards right due to an increase in the demand for houses, which in turn results in increase in demand for timber. What does the supply curve show? A firm will supply more when the consumer purchasing power increases. Well, that has to do with demand. The higher the price, the fewer goods are supplied. No, the higher the price, the higher the goods are supplied. The lower the price, the more profit. Obviously not. The more price is for the product, the more the price is for the product, the more the profit potential is for the businesses to generate profits through dealing in those products. There's a positive relationship between quantity supplied and price. Yes, as the price goes up, the potential to make a profit increases. More and more suppliers take interest, and the quantity supplied increases. So there's a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. We've talked about it in demand and supply. A global pandemic causes the demand for air travel to decrease. Which value of the price of supply for air travel will cause the number of tickets for air travel to fall the most? So let me elaborate it using a diagram. What they're saying is that the demand for air travel has decreased. So this is your demand curve, and the demand curve is shifted towards left from D1 to D2, let's say, right? And the thing is, the more elastic the supply is, the greater the fall will be in quantity. You can see why it's the case. For example, let's say the supply is less elastic. So my quantity falls from this level to this level. This is not too big of a fall, right? However, let me raise this, and let me draw a more elastic supply curve. You see how big this fall is in quantity on the x-axis? So if the supply curve was more elastic, which means if it was more flat, then this will cause the number of tickets of air travel to fall the most. So it has to be more elastic. The most elastic option that you have is 1.5. So that's why I go with 1.5. All right, next question. What is a disadvantage of market economy? Not enough competition. No, there is competition. Okay, in planned economy, the government is producing, so there is no competition. Not enough merit goods. Yes, that's a market failure, because we are not concerned about the social cost and benefit, but rather the private cost and private benefits, and demand and supply is used to allocate the resources based on private costs and benefits. So this results in market failure because there's underproduction and misallocation of resources in the production of merit goods. No consumer choice. Obviously there is consumer choice. There are a lot of competitors offering a variety of goods, and there's a choice to consumers. There's a state intervention. No, state intervention is in the case of mixed market economy. You must revise this concept in a lot of depth. I mean, if you want live classes, more than welcome. I teach these concepts in a lot more depth. I mean, you would remember it for the rest of your life, and obviously the same topics are going to be there in AS and A2 levels as well. So it's very important that you have a solid foundation and you take proper sessions. If you're not getting it at a school, you're more than welcome to join us for online sessions. And even if you're not studying at a school, I mean, we've got expert tutors. I mean, I'm not praising myself, but when we see the results of our students, a lot of them, going from D, E grades to getting an A star within time of 1 or 1.5 years studying with us, and this really makes us feel confident in proclaiming that, we have got the best services that we're offering to IGCSE students from all over the world. Now moving on to the next question. Droughts in some countries caused the supply of wheat to fall. Wheat prices then rose, providing an opportunity for wheat producers in other countries to increase supply. Okay, why might the price of wheat continue to be high in the year following the drought? So what they're saying is that basically the supply of wheat fell. So If the supply falls, this increases the price. Now the question is, wheat prices then rose, proving an opportunity cost for wheat producers in other countries to increase supply. This meant that in other countries, the supply increased or extended, all right? We could say extension of supply happened because of higher prices. Why might the price of wheat continue to be high in the year following the drought? Different weather conditions allowed a bump. Well, obviously, if there's a bumper harvest, so basically, if you have moved from S1 to S2, if there's a bumper harvest, then supply is going to shift towards right and the price is going to come down. So this is not the correct answer because it says that the price is still high. Suppliers unaffected by drought failed to increase output. Yes, if there's no increase in output and supply has shifted towards left, the price will continue to be high. Subsidy will decrease the prices. The wheat market means it came back to original position here, so this is also wrong. Okay, next question. Newly built houses tend to be inelastic in supply. A government aim is to make the supply more elastic by relaxing building regulations. So if there's a relaxation in the building regulation, the supply is going to shift towards right, is going to increase. But does it make the supply more elastic? What determines elasticity? Well, there are a lot of factors. Let's read here. Why is the government not likely to achieve the aim immediately? Which means that why is it that it might not be able to make supply elastic? Because its aim is to make supply more elastic. Banks will only lend to high-income earners. Well, that affects demand for housing, not supply. Cost of building materials fluctuate according to the season. What does it have to do with elasticity? It has to do with maybe the cost increasing would shift the supply curve towards left and cost decreasing would shift the supply curve towards right. It will not still affect the elasticity of the supply. Houses take a long period of time to be built. Yes, if something takes a very long period of time to be produced, right, then its supply tends to be more inelastic. Only if you're able to reduce the time span that it takes to produce that particular item, we can make the supply more elastic or responsive. I hope you got that. Next. A person planning for old age saves in the form of money rather than goods. Which function does money perform when this is done? Well, saving, right? A person of old age saves in the form of money rather than goods. Well, I mean, when we're saving, we're looking for money to function as a store of value. All right. Next, what is not normally a function of the central bank of a country? What is not? Please be careful here when they say not. Acting this is a function of money. This should be taught to you in the classes. Issuing notes and coin is a function of central bank. Operating the government monetary policy is a function. Setting government is not, okay? This is not the function of central bank because this is what the government does. It creates its fiscal budget. It does not have to do with monetary policy. It does not have to do with any of the other functions of central bank. So setting the government budget. What is a trade union most likely to protect? The rights. This is the definition of trade union, not the profit, not the satisfaction, not the social welfare. It's responsible for the well-being and the welfare of its members that are employees or group of workers. Rights of group of workers. Okay, a person sets up a street food stall. What is necessary for the food stall to survive in the long run? Well, look, in the long run, we would want our business to be profitable because if it's not profitable, we'll shut it down. So it should be yes and yes. This is wrong. This is wrong. We want profitability. If it's not profitable, then why would we want to run the business in first place? Do we also want growth in the long run? Maybe we don't necessarily want growth. I mean, if the business is already mature, as long as it's creating profits for the business, if it's profitable, we might continue to run it, and we might not even seek to expand it because owners might not want additional responsibility and a headache. So growth is not necessarily, it says what is necessary. It is important, but it's not necessary to survive in the long run. In the short run, it's important. It could be important to grow because of the ability to achieve economies of scale and cost efficiency. But in the long run, maybe we don't want to pursue growth. We're happy with the level of the size of the business and level of activity that we are doing. But we do want profitability as business owners. A large privately owned firm is the sole supplier of electricity to the city. It's a sole supplier. It's a monopoly. Right, in a monopoly, what characteristics exist? Which combination of characteristics is likely to exist for this firm? Well, in a monopoly, you could say the barriers to entry are high. Long run profits, they're high in a monopoly. And we are price makers. So all the three combinations are going to be in option A. So it's in monopoly, the barriers to entry high, long profit is high, and the business is a price maker, not a price taker, which is the case in a perfectly competitive market structure. Okay, when a firm produces 200 units, the total real cost is 600, the total fixed cost is 2,000. That means the total cost is 2,000 plus 600, which is $2,600. This is the total cost. Okay, we divide the total cost by 200 units, divided by 200, and we're gonna get $13. All right, next question. The government of country C announces a forecast budget deficit of $234 billion as part of its fiscal policy. So it's running a budget deficit. What is the effect of this forecast budget deficit likely to be? Well, when there's a budget deficit, it means we're pursuing an expansionary fiscal policy. Come on, guys. Now, this is again a concept that we teach in classes. What's expansionary, what's contractionary? When there's a budget deficit, it's expansionary. So there's an increase in economic growth, not decrease. This is wrong. A decrease in inflation, wrong. There can be demand pull inflation. There's increase in employment, yes, because economy is growing due to fiscal deficit and expansionary fiscal policy. And as economy is growing, more workers are needed, and there's an increase in employment. And D is not the answer. Okay, next. Low income groups do not pay income taxes but are able to use state provided health care benefits. What does this illustrate? Well, what this illustrates is that people are not paying taxes, but they're able to use benefits. It means that they're getting freebies. They're getting provided something for which they're not paid for. And this is good because it helps us redistribute income. The government uses monetary policy and reduces the interest rate. The government uses monetary policy and reduces the interest rate. That's an expansionary monetary policy, guys. Previously, we talked about a fiscal policy. This is an expansionary monetary policy. What will be the consequence of this policy? A decrease in inflation? Well, there could be increase in inflation. Again, it could be demand pull inflation. An increase in the level of investments? Yes, this is the case. Savings would not increase because interest rate is low. And unemployment will not increase because people are spending, they're investing. Due to low interest rates, they're able to borrow, and this creates more economic activity and more employment opportunities. So we're going to go with option B, an increase in the level of investment because of lower interest rates and cheaper borrowings. What is likely objective of supply side policy? Improve productive potential. It does not increase taxation. Increasing the power of trade unions, no. Promoting will sector, no. Okay, next. An increase in which economic data best describes economic growth? Well, usually there is demand pull inflation, but the question is best. So let's think about other options. Level of consumption, well, this can also create economic growth because this increases aggregate demand. Level of output is the best one. A lot of you might have mistaken this for either of these options. This is a tricky question. But the thing is, like, let me show you on a diagram. This is your aggregate supply curve. And this is your aggregate demand. So if your aggregate demand is rising, there might be a little bit of inflation and output might be increasing. Right? So increasing consumption can be correct. Right? In this case, increasing revenues can be correct. So this can be correct and this can also be correct, but we don't go with these two options. And this also can be correct, but it's not necessary that living standards always rise when economy is growing, because economic growth is just one aspect of increasing living standards. There are other aspects to it, like, quality of the healthcare and quality of education that improve the living standards, and that does not have to do with the level of economic output. Right, level of economic output or GDP. So GDP could rise if aggregate demand is rising in these two cases. This one is wrong. In these two cases, it could be correct. But the reason why it's not correct is because if your aggregate demand curve was here, let's say, and if it rose to this level, now you see that GDP is not increasing necessarily. It's at this level. Let's say at point X. Between this and this, there's not much of an increase. Aggregate supply should increase. Aggregate supply should increase for there to be increase in output. I hope you guys can understand this. AS2, from AS1 to AS2. When we experience an increase in aggregate supply or level of output, then your GDP is actually increasing. Level of output must increase. Like, let me illustrate this here as well. Okay, let me just erase this. So basically, you see, when your aggregate supply curve was elastic, then increase in aggregate demand cause your aggregate output to rise. Increase in consumption is increase in aggregate demand, but this will not always be the case that it increases the aggregate total output. Why? Because when you're opening at this curve here, which is inelastic, the output is not rising on the x-axis. There is no increase over here. We are at this point, x. It's only inflation that's increasing. So we want there to be an increase in the level of output. Please try to understand. For there to be an increase in economy or economic growth. Okay, next question. What is full employment considered to be? Okay, when we talk about full employment, there must be no cyclical employment. We cannot avoid frictional unemployment. There must be no cyclical unemployment because cyclical unemployment is due to recession and lack of economic demand, lack of aggregate demand in an economy. Frictional employment cannot be avoided. I mean, it's due to people switching in between jobs, changing their jobs, and it's natural. Some people will need some period time span for them to be able to move from one job to other, and it's not because there are lack of employment opportunities or so we consider this to be full employment even if there's frictional unemployment, right? And seasonal unemployment is also not gonna hinder us from achieving full employment because it's obvious that some people work on seasonal basis, so they will work for a part of the year and for the other part of the year they might not be working. So seasonal employment, if it's there, it's still considered to be full employment. So no seasonal employment does not necessarily mean there's full employment, but when there's no cyclical unemployment, that's when there is full employment, right? And no private sector unemployment will obviously frictional and seasonal unemployment will happen in the private sector as well in some cases. So no private sector unemployment does not necessarily mean there's full employment. What essentially means there's full employment is that there's no cyclical unemployment. All right, next question. Which group is most likely to benefit during the period of rapid inflation? When there's inflation, the price of goods and services are rising, right? If you're an exporter, your exports would go down. If you're a pensioner, the value of the money that you have saved has been lost because over time the goods and services have increased in value. So when you receive your money that you had saved, it won't be as valuable, so you're at lost. People with debts, wow, they are enjoying it when there's inflation because let's say I borrowed $100,000 and immediately, and I bought a car, let's say, or I bought a house, and because of inflation, the price of my house or anything else that I bought using that money doubled because of rapid inflation. Now, the good that I had bought has doubled in value because of inflation, and I have to pay back my debts. I could just simply sell whatever I had borrowed. I could just simply sell whatever I had bought using my borrowings, right? And I could use the cash to pay back my debts, and I would still have a lot of money left for me. So I have benefited because of inflation, because when I borrowed, the money had more value. And when I'm paying back those borrowing, the money has lost value. So I'm a winner over here. A saver would be a loser in this case, because if I saved money and I did not buy something that could have been bought for $100,000, just an example, right? Now, when I withdraw my savings, that exact same thing that I could have bought for $100,000 is going to cost me $200,000. So my money is worth half what it was worth. Now, that's what rapid inflation does. It benefits the people with debts. It adversely affects the people that save. So it's bad for the people that are saving. Rapid inflation is bad, and it's good for the people that are not saving but rather borrowing. So the value of the money that they've borrowed has decreased. So when they return those borrowings back, they're not actually giving back that much of value in terms of the actual goods and services that the money could buy. I hope you understand the concept. What are the components of Human Development Index? The three things in HDI, okay? So let's say there are again, these questions keep on repeating. Like, I mean, how could you not get 30 out of 30? I mean, it's so easy. So the three things are your income, your education, and your healthcare. So when we talk about income, we can say GDP or GNI per head. When we talk about education, you can say school expected years of schooling, and when we talk about healthcare, it's life expectancy at birth. It's not GNI, it's GNI per head. So that part is missing, so this is wrong. This is correct. Population, this is not the case. This is not the case. This is theoretical. Okay. Which situation must produce an aging population? Which means that the average age of the country rises. When there's a falling death rate, I mean, less people are dying, they're going to live for longer period. The average age of the population will increase, and I mean, if at the same time there were more young people, then this would increase the average age of children. This would decrease the average age of the population, but the thing is that the less children being born due to falling birth rate, and people are living more years, so there are more elderly that compose the population, total population, and this increased the average age of the country. So we're going to go with option A. All right, next question. The table shows the unemployment rate in 3 developed economies in 1 year: 7.6, 8.2, 10.9. These are all developed economies: US, Sweden, France. What is the main cause of high rates of unemployment in developed economies in periods of recession? When there's a recession, basically, there's a decrease in total demand, and this causes there to be, because since labor is drive demand, there's less of a demand for labor due to less demand for goods and services in a period of recession, and this increases the unemployment. This is wrong, this is wrong, and this is wrong. Okay. What is most likely to result from an extension of a specialization in manufacturing? When there's a specialization, the average cost of production would go down, right? And for the consumers, some prices will be reduced. Yes, because the cost of production has gone down due to specialization. It increases efficiency, obviously, so it reduces the cost of production, and lower prices are charged to the consumers in order to be more competitive. And for the consumer, some price will be reduced. For the country, there will be less dependence on international trade. No, because of the specialization, there's more trading because production is in large quantities and some of the produce is exported. For the employee, the work will become more varied. No, the work is monotonous and repetitive. For the producer, there will be less efficiency. There will be more efficiency, which brings down the cost of production and which reduces the prices. Okay, a country imposes a tariff on an imported product. What is the effect of this change? When there's a tariff, the price of the product increases. Yes. This is wrong, this is wrong. Yes. The quantity of the product imported is fixed. No, because that's in the case of quota. This is in a quota. All right? That it is fixed. In tariffs, no, it's not fixed. It's just that it's going to be more expensive and the price of the product increases. Depending on elasticity, it decreases, but it's not fixed. The quantity decreases depending on the elasticity of the product because the price has just gone up and caused the supply curve to shift towards left. That's what the tariff does. In more depth, obviously, you don't understand when we're talking about the concepts in detail. But C is the answer. Your price would go up. The price would go up. Let's show it to you again. The price of the product increases as the supply curve shifts towards left due to tariffs, and the opposite is true for subsidies. But we're talking about tariffs on imported products, so there's a different diagram for it, but we're not going to get into that much depth. And the quantity of the product imported is fixed. Well, that's the definition of quota. We're setting a limit on the imports that are coming to the country. So this is no, this is yes. Okay, the world demand for oil is price inelastic and the oil is paid for in US dollars. If the price of oil falls rapidly, how might it affect the US dollar? So basically, if the price of oil falls, then the demand for dollars fall because we don't need as many dollars now. As the demand for oil is falling or the price or that is charged for oil is falling, so we don't need as much in dollars to buy that oil, so the demand for oil is less. All other options, I guess, is wrong, yeah. And exchange, well, obviously, when the demand decreases for dollars, let's say this is the demand for dollars and this is the supply of dollars. When the demand decreases, the value of dollars goes down. Here we're talking about exchange rate. Just like a price in goods and services, there's an exchange rate instead of prices on the y-axis. And there is the quantity or dollars or, yeah, I mean, quantity, just write quantity over here. I'm going to just write Q. So exchange rate would go down, okay, because your demand has shifted towards left. Okay, next. Which benefit do multinational companies bring to their home country? Okay, it's not host country, right? Flow of profits, yep. So higher wages, I mean, it's in the host country because if a business is being established in a country, it's going to create demand for labor, the wages are going to go up. It increases employment, yes, as the demand for labor is created due to establishment of a business bringing in investment from abroad. That's a benefit to the host country. There's more investment, yes, in a host country there's investment, but the home country where this MNC is based, is going to receive the profits, and these profits that are earned in a host country as a result of investment, they're going to be repatriated. Okay, the repatriation of profits happens to the home country, and that home country receives a flow of profits from the host country where the MNC is running its operations.